Hey, it's Angie, and this is Midlife Magic and Mayhem. And oh boy, are you in for a treat. This episode with Alli Kirk is about making aging a process of evolution, not of deterioration. But first, a bit about Alli. She is a personal growth specialist, Reiki Master and Teacher, and gifted energy worker. I've worked many times with Alli over the past several years, and she is the real thing. I consider her part of my magic tribe. Alli came to the world of spirituality, energy, and Reiki in 2012 through a daily meditation practice that totally transformed her life. Her personal growth journey was sudden, spontaneous, and quite unexpected. As she rounded the corner to 40, the life she created for herself all of a sudden felt constricting, suffocating, and soul-sucking. She awakened to realize that the life she was living, a 20-year marriage, 2 beautiful children, and a successful business, wasn't one of her own choosing, but one that was subtly thrust upon her by the rigid expectations of her conservative Christian upbringing. It was a life created not to make her happy, but to provide her family with the life they thought she should have. Her daily meditation and Reiki practice became powerful tools that assist her in creating the life she lives now. A life built upon unconditional self-love, radical self-acceptance, and the awareness of her divinity, even in her humanness. Both practices continue to steer the course of her personal evolution every day. By curating what she learned about directing psycho-spirituality towards self-actualization and personal empowerment, she is passionate about helping others build a plan for personal growth that resonates with them so they can feel inspired and empowered to create their own deeply fulfilling lives. In this conversation, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about emotions, where they come from, where they are stored, and how to clear them. Her practices that moved her with real wellness through menopause and beyond. We talk about how thoughts create our reality, even the triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone, and how she shows up in our lives. We talk about yin and yang energy, feminine and masculine energies, and how they play through every human being. And you will not want to miss this brilliant 2-step process for handling upsets, stress, and clearing emotions. I will be using this myself, for sure. And finally, what magic means to her and how she creates it in her own life. This is a really special episode. Alli is a brilliant human and so creative and talented and knowledgeable about her work. I really hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi, how are you, Angie?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for being here on Midlife Magic and Mayhem.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Well, you are someone that I've known for many years. I had first found you in the domain of massage therapy, energy work, Reiki, that world. So I would love if you would introduce yourself and tell us, in your own words, a bit about who you are, your story, and how you came to be where you are.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So you're right. I've been a massage therapist for 20 years, and I actually just stepped out of massage therapy at the end of 2022 because my work has really evolved into the space of energy medicine and vibrational healing, most notably through the training, the practice of Reiki. And I know you're going to ask me a little bit about Reiki, but Reiki is a Japanese healing modality that addresses healing the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual body through the human electromagnetic field, the chakra system, the meridian system, and the subconscious mind. What I've found over 20 years of doing body work, all types of body work, is that energy medicine really is the next generation of self-care. So I'm really excited to be stepping fully into that and offering Reiki and mentoring programs for people who are on the path of conscious evolution and really wanting to get to know themselves and develop themselves at the soul level.
That's beautiful. What does conscious evolution mean to you?
So we're
for
all
people that
kind
might
of
not be
evolving.
aware of that language.
Yeah, of course. Well, like it or not, whether you're if you're in a body, you are evolving because the earth is evolving. And that can mean a number of different things to a number of different people. But conscious evolution is that you know that you're evolving and you are actually supporting that process through deepening your self-care practices, through seeking things like psychotherapy and Reiki therapy that are, attuning you to your feelings and that are bringing to light past trauma and illuminating how you've been perhaps raised or mishandled as a child so that you can grow and evolve out of the subconscious patterns that are keeping you stuck where you're at. And I've found that there are people who are evolving by happenstance, meaning that they're just evolving as they go and they're not really thinking about developing themselves or their evolutionary process. And then there are people who are like, no, I am an evolving human and I want to do what I can to support that process in every way possible.
How does Reiki specifically support that process? And what is Reiki?
Yeah, so Reiki hails from Japan. It's a light to no touch healing modality started by a man named Dr. Usui. And it addresses healing through the human electromagnetic field, the more earth-based language is the auric field, you might have heard, the chakra system, the 7 chakras. I've found Reiki to be a very useful tool in accessing the subconscious mind, where we store a lot of our traumatic events and our memories and emotions around those traumatic events. The subconscious mind, brain scientists and psychologists are really starting to understand how much the subconscious mind governs our reality, which seems like a really unfair thing because by its very nature, the subconscious mind is below the levels of consciousness. So we do things and attract things to us that we don't know we're attracting. And what Reiki does is it opens up the cells of the body by placing the mind and body in a very deeply relaxed state. It actually puts the brain in the theta brainwave state, which is the state that brain scientists identify with meditation and deep sleep. And it's in that deeply relaxed state that the body triggers its own healing process and allows the cells to open and begin to release the trapped energy of past traumatic events and the emotions and memories and feelings that surround them. And by letting go and allowing the body to release those things, we can begin to create new neural pathways of thoughts and beliefs about ourselves and one another, and really just completely redesign our reality.
So, the concept of deep relaxation is so fascinating to me because I think for so many of us, it's really foreign. We think we are relaxed. Maybe we're sitting watching Netflix, or we're even in meditation, or even asleep. And I know I found in my experience through meditation, through energy work, and even different, medicine journeys and all sorts of different ways, the practice and the actual experience of deep relaxation is not something that I really was familiar with until fairly recently. And I always considered myself to be a pretty chill and relaxed person. And in fact, there are parts of me that are not at all. Right. Yeah. And so, and I loved what you were saying about this is how the subconscious, and this is how the subconscious processes and where it processes is in this deeply relaxed state. Yeah. And this is where healing takes place. Yes. So if we think about it, and Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and there's so much work now around somatic healing and trauma actually being stored in the tissues of the body. I'm actually touching my shoulders if you're just listening to this. And it's just brilliant and fascinating work. And I found in my own experience and so many people in my community that, yes, we can have a lot of conversation and talk therapy and cognitive therapy. And that's wonderful for what it's good for.
Yes.
And it's missing the body, right?
Correct.
There's yes, and it's great, but there's a whole other vast universe out there within our bodies and within the possibility of healing when we go into the body, and like what you're talking about with Reiki, actually opening up the cells, connecting the mind to the body, and opening up areas that we didn't even know existed, and like getting into those deeper levels of subconscious mind. So that's just brilliant. Yeah. Love that. Can Reiki be done remotely, or do you have to be in person?
That's a really excellent question, and I'm so glad you asked. Yes, because Reiki is energy, its literal translation from Japanese is spirit energy. So it really is just another, it's a particular range of frequencies within the vast infinite range of frequencies of universal consciousness or universal life force. And so because it's energy and it's not physical matter, it's not bound by time and space like dealing with the physical body is. So Reiki can be both given and received through the power of intention. And when you have two or even more people, you know, you can give Reiki at a distance to a group. I do that with people over Zoom all the time. You can set your intention as a practitioner to channel the Reiki through your body, but then emanate it out to where or whom or whatever consents to receive it. And it's actually a very powerful practice to give and receive Reiki at a distance.
That is fascinating. It reminds me of wave theory, right? So this, like, if someone's listening and they're going, what the fuck are these people talking about? Like, this woo, what is happening here? Like, this is actually physics. Like this, it's real. Like there is science out there proving what some indigenous cultures and native cultures and yoga theory and some of these deeper Eastern wisdom practices have been practicing for thousands of years.
Yes.
I know Reiki is a newer thing, but quantum physics and quantum theory is being proven now. Like there's science around it. And wave theory, if anybody wants to go look that up, I'm actually going to link to something in the show notes. That is such a cool little video. So it's about wave theory, but it reminded me of what you were talking about, even done remotely. Like you can tap into a frequency, like you're dialing in on a radio.
Yes.
And into this pattern of energy, because everything is energy.
Yes.
And actually do the work there.
Yeah. Some scientists are actually putting forth the notion that there's no such thing as space, because even what we consider space is filled with billions and billions and trillions of electrons that ultimately join everything together in this great cosmic web. And we see this illustrated in shows, you know, like there's a show on Netflix about the consciousness of fungi and how the web of fungi subterranean, like through the trees and through the dirt, actually creates this whole web of sentient beings and consciousness underneath the earth that we can't see. They're ultimately all connected. Ultimately, everything is all connected.
Absolutely. And I love that. There's a movie called Fantastic Fungi. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh my God. It's so good. I'm going to have to link that too.
Yeah. That's a great way of illustrating that theory in a way that feels more tangible if people are having a hard time with the higher level stuff. And scientists are actually also studying how thoughts become things. They're getting very, very close to illustrating how your thoughts actually ultimately create your reality. And when you are steeped and mired in negativity and, you know, anger and resentment and bitterness, you continually manifest situations and people and places that cement those negative beliefs. Whereas if you begin to change your belief system and focus on things that are positive and uplifting and joyful and love-based, you can actually begin to mold and shape your reality into something completely new. It's fascinating. We really are both the creator and the created.
So good. Yeah, we really do. We're magnetizing. We're bringing things to us. And this is, it might sound like law of attraction, but I'm actually speaking to something different. Yeah. It's more of a magnetization. And this is all thoughts becoming things. And that's like a whole different episode conversation. I love it. But it is like, if we just knew how our way of being affected everything else, it's like being the center of a wheel. If we change what's happening in the center of the wheel, it radiates out to all the spokes in every single part of our life.
Yes.
And that's the thing. And people say, well, how do I change my beliefs then? Right. Again, whole other episode, whole different conversation.
Yes. But I will
yes.
say Reiki is a powerful tool for helping to shift your beliefs. You know, there are aspects of Reiki that are very good at releasing your attachment to negative thinking and negative thoughts and false and limiting beliefs. And then there are aspects of Reiki that put you in touch with your higher self or your soul self and your heart's wisdom. And that is really where, you know, the truth of eternal positivity lies, is in making the connection with heart and the higher self. So Reiki is definitely a part of that conversation, I feel like.
Yeah. And please correct me if I'm mistaken, or if you know this information, or if we don't know this information, that's fine too. But isn't the electromagnetic field around the heart the largest in the body? And hasn't it been proven that it extends out from the physical body like 7 feet, or I might be getting that number wrong, but a pretty large distance away from the physical body?
Yeah, actually our entire auric field, so from top to bottom, and our 7 chakras actually build the 7 layers of the auric field. Our entire auric field can extend out around us up to 7 feet in all directions. But you're right, there's something called the Heart Math Institute. And in this place, they're actually studying the metrics of the heart and the fact that it has a deeper sense of intelligence than actually the brain does. They're finding that the brain is really just a big computer that stores information, but it doesn't actually think. The mind is housed in every cell in the body, and the wisest intelligence, if you will, comes from the intelligence of the heart. The heart vibrates at a much faster pace than the brain does, just measuring, you know, anatomically. And the heart field does emanate out a significant distance. I think it's much greater even than feet. I think it actually goes into the miles. I had heard a statistic on it a long time ago, and I'm terrible at math because I'm much more right brain. So
got it.
The heart is not the space of math-based intelligence.
Oh, yes, I resonate with that. I don't do
I'm
math.
Totally okay with that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because especially the piece about the brain and the mind, because
Yes.
in my work and in my foundational system, yes, the brain is a computer. It is a very good computer. It is a processing system.
Yeah.
It doesn't think on its own. And this is a whole other yet another conversation about thoughts and watching ourselves with our thoughts in meditation.
Yeah.
Try to find them. Try to find a thought and then watch it unravel. This has been my work in my meditations recently. It's so wonderful. And yes, the mind is in every cell in the body. The mind is something different than the brain. Right. Correct. So I have mind in my pinky finger. Definitely have mind in the gut biome. That's been 100%. Proven. Yes. Like there are just as many brain, quote unquote, brain cells in our gut as there are in our brain. And that's been like, there's research.
Yeah, that's proven. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
that's proven. So what we eat, how we treat our microbiome and our gut is so crucially important to how we think, how we feel, the thoughts that are coming out of our brains.
Absolutely.
So yeah, having that distinction between brain and mind, and then the whole work of the body around somatic work, somatic energy, somatic healing. We cannot exclude the body from how we feel, how we think, and we can. I mean, the systems in our lives. Like we tend to walk around like bobbleheads and think we're going to think our way out of everything.
Yes.
Move your body.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. And I think we touched on this in another conversation we had about how when you're feeling an emotion well up, it really is just energy, in motion. Emotion. And so when you're feeling that release, that's actually a physical process. That's not a brain process. That is a physical process of your body's cells opening and moving off a stored emotion. And it's always a good thing. It's just a matter of learning how to dance with it in a productive way.
really brilliant. Learning how to dance with emotions as they come up and seeing them for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the attempt, right, is to, again, see them for what they are and not constantly create story around what they mean.
Yes.
Because I think that's what we can do. And that's why people tend to feel like I'm stuck in a certain area, or why do I keep feeling this way? Why does this certain thing keep happening to me? Why does this same type of person keep happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when these emotions come up, if we can just see them for what they are.
Yeah.
And so often they just need to be moved through, or cleared with energy work, or moved with energy work. Yeah. And then it takes care of itself. There's nothing to do around it. The story actually unravels. And so, oftentimes we'll have an emotion, or we'll have an upset, or something will happen. And then we take some behavior attaches to it. Then we take an action beyond that, and then create more drama. And then there's a whole thing that's got to be cleaned up, when really all we need to do is take a breath and move.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll tell you, one of the things that I've really learned to ask myself through some training that I had several years ago in psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of how emotion and stored emotion and trauma affect physical health, particularly the immune system. The author of the textbook I read for that class said he's got a million letters after his name, but of other things, he is a talk therapist. And he always asks his clients, what is it that this event reminds you of? Because if you're in an event and something triggers you, and you're having what most of us could probably identify as an inappropriately strong emotional reaction to it, if you can just take a moment and, either later after the emotion has really completed its process of moving through your body, and say, I wonder what this reminded me of. 9 times out of 10, your subconscious mind will deliver you the answer from something in your past, going even way back into childhood. And once you can see what the core wound was, and that it is actually in your past, that's when that repetitive cycle ends. Because in that moment, you're integrating the part of you that was wounded, say as a 3-year-old. And once he or she is integrated, you don't need to heal that anymore. So you'll stop attracting that situation to you ever again. It's like a really fascinating process the body has. Like the guy who wrote that book said, your soul wants full integration. So if there are pieces of you that are scattered, or what the spiritual community calls fractured, right? Then your soul will continue to vibrate situations and people into your life and your experience to get you to recognize, oh, I needed to heal that thing from 25 years ago. And once you do, it's gone. The pattern is broken, and you can move forward into something new.
And we are patterns. Like patterns and systems run in us. And often they are at the subconscious level, like we were speaking to before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So having that deeper healing, and I love that question. What does this remind me of? What does this event remind me of? And I can see it and help it move. And often too, and I think we actually talked about this too in a previous conversation. Sometimes when things come up, an event, an emotion, do we always have to analyze it and quote unquote figure it out? Or can it just be, I guess the question is, do we really always need to analyze everything to death?
Yeah.
Or can we just move things through, and we don't need to know why it was there?
Yeah, I think that's
the distinction.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant question. And I love that you asked it. And it is a really important one. I think that there's benefit to both, right? Whenever my children come to me and they're upset, I ask them, does it have a story? I try never to ask them what's wrong with you, because that implants the subconscious belief that they're wrong for having an emotion, or that they're having some emotion, and that means something is wrong with them. So I say, does your emotion have a story? And if they say yes, then I'm like, okay, well, do you feel like talking about it? If they say no, then I'm like, okay, well, go move your body. So what comes to the surface as far as a story or a meaning for your emotion is what you need to pay attention to. But sometimes it's just emotion moving and you don't need to pay attention to it. So again, that's where that question becomes really helpful, because sometimes, most often I get an answer to that question. It'll be, oh yeah, that, remember when you were 4 and your mom did this, well, now your partner's doing this and it's triggering the bejesus out of you, and it's because that's how you were treated as a child. And so anyway, so there's that whole process. But sometimes I just cry because my eyes need to detox,
And sometimes it can just be that.
Yeah, it can just be that. And so I think, again, it's learning about the self. It's learning how to dance with it. I think that the healthiest thing we can do as far as letting an emotion pass through is to give body priority and recognize that an emotion is first a physical bodily process of letting go. So if you can, in the moment, move your body, like you said, all the things, jumping, stomping, running, squatting, sounding, whatever you can do in the moment. Once your body feels wrung out in a really relieved way, like the kind of way it feels after you've had a really good cry, then there's an opportunity to sit and say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I flew off the handle so much at this very little thing. There must be something beneath that. What does this remind me of? So you can take pen to paper, you can, engage your left brain and say, okay, let's analyze this a little bit and see if there isn't any gold there. See if there is a fractured part of the self that I can't bring into integration.
What a gorgeous process. I just wrote that down, like a 2-step process, like start with the body and then sense it. And for me, as I'm listening to you, what that would also do is sensitize us to our body.
Yeah.
So that we can start to pay attention to understanding the language and the messages that the body is sending to us all the time.
Thank you. I love that so much. Yes.
Right. So it's that first step of go to the body first is sensitizing us, wringing it out, having us really pay attention and have awareness of what the body is doing and what's being said and what's trying to be communicated. And then with language, come in behind that and ask the conscious mind a question.
Yes. I love
brilliant.
That. Yeah.
What a brilliant process. I'm going to use that every day from now on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm actually going to pivot because there's something that I really, really want to get to, since our audience specifically is women in midlife and around menopause and in all those areas. When we first were speaking about having this conversation, and I knew how much richness and depth and vastness of all the different places that we could go because of who you are and how much knowledge and wisdom that you have. But when I asked okay, well, is there something that, is there an area to focus on? What do we think we want to talk about? You sent me a beautiful paragraph that I actually want to just read so everyone can hear it. And then we can speak to it after that. So what you sent me is, I would love to address the archetypal triple goddess and how she governs our life stages as women. Perimenopause is really an ascension process for a woman, but we tend to be deeply terrified of it because of our culture's vilification of the crone aspect of the triple goddess and the overworship of the maiden. And we'll explain these in a minute. But there are many gifts of embodying the crone, and I'd love to touch on them. I have absolutely adored embodying her in my own menopause transition. I could also touch on the psycho-spiritual initiations of midlife and how it is an invitation into a purposeful grief process, an excavation of the subconscious shadow material from our youth. Gorgeousness. So I guess first, let's talk about the triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone.
Yes.
Have us be familiar with that, with those terms and what they mean.
Sure, absolutely. So it probably would be helpful for me to give a little bit of background of my own perimenopausal journey,
Please.
because really that's kind of when the divine feminine began to awaken within me. And I began to have this really powerful getting to know you decade with the divine feminine through all of the traditional archetypes across the globe. And the triple goddess. So that was really, I was sitting in my living room on a very pivotal day. It was 2013, January 2nd. My school age children had just gone back to school. And in a couple of months, I was going to be turning 40. And I was freaking out because I was deeply afraid of the aging process. I was deeply afraid of the landmark birthdays, particularly 40, because I remember looking at my mother at 40 when I was in high school. And I remember just thinking she was already so old. She was already bitter. She was already overweight and horribly unhealthy. She had an early hysterectomy at 42. And I was like, my God, is this where I'm going? And so I started to journal about it. And I remember being faced with a choice for my higher self. I could choose to make my aging and my perimenopausal process, which I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I could choose to make that a process of ascension or conscious evolution, setting my intention to just continue to evolve and get better, so to speak, with age. Or I could choose the downward spiral of deterioration that most of our parents and grandparents seem to have chosen. So I remember writing in my journal, like, I want to ascend into my age. And it was like everything in the universe got turned on, and all of my guides were just like, all right, she said the words, let's go. And so my life was thrown into a deeply cataclysmic state. I left my marriage within 6 months of that. I was out on my own for the first time in my life, supporting 2 children and having a massive psychosexual, spiritual awakening like I had never thought possible. So in the beginning of all that turmoil, the triple goddess was really the first goddess to make herself known to me. She's a primordial goddess. She's very, very old, and she can be found across a number of different traditions. I understand and connect with her the most to the Celtic tradition because that's where my heritage is from, and that's an easy point of entry for me. But the triple goddess is a 3-phased goddess, and she has her maiden aspect, which corresponds with the waxing gibbous of the moon, so the first quarter moon. The maiden embodies our youthfulness, our sense of zest and joy and curiosity and playfulness with life. She's very enthusiastic. She's, what we would consider the quintessential little girl, if you will. Then as we age or mature, we move into our mother aspect or the queen aspect, which is really, she's associated with the full moon. So she is the aspect of us that is fertile. We're giving birth to children, yes, but we're also giving birth to businesses and projects and books. And it's a very proliferative, flowering, full expression of our feminine creativity. And then we have the third phase, which is associated with the waning gibbous, which is the part of the moon where it goes right before it goes to the dark moon. And that's what the tradition calls the crone, or the wizened old woman. And in ancient traditions, the crone was actually like the pinnacle of motherhood. She was celebrated for her oracular gifts, her ability to vision and see, her ability to see at a very high level. She can pinpoint what things are being created and manifested that are in alignment with love and which ones aren't, and how we need to shift around that to make sure that things are going in the right direction. She is pure vibration and pure consciousness. And her way of exuding feminine power is, in my opinion, in my experience, the most deeply feminine. It's deep rest, deep stillness, deep inward focus. It is just coming into a room and holding presence there. And it's so badass, but we're so conditioned as women to fear that because men in the patriarchy absolutely love the maiden, and they want us to stay maidens forever. And there's actually a good reason for that. Each of the aspects of the crone, like anything else in the universe, has a light aspect and a shadow aspect. So for the maiden aspect, she has all these beautiful, fun-loving, carefree, responsibility-free traits that are extremely attractive. But in her shadow, she's also profoundly self-conscious, does not own her body, is very naive and easily duped and manipulated. And that is the part that the patriarchy really latches onto. At a subconscious level, women are discouraged from their own maturation and ascension process. And I became really, really angry when I started to really see how I was being trained, and I had been trained my whole life to fear and denigrate and hate that process for myself. Because I'm more in my power today at almost 50 and postmenopausal than I've ever been in my entire life.
So resonate with that. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, I actually feel more creative now than I did in my mother. I mean, I'm a mother. I will always be a mother. I have 2 children, but in the mothering phase, the pre-menopausal phase, I feel much more creative now.
Yes.
Because I do feel that sense of stepping into this age with vision.
Yes.
And having done so much work and done, and I've been speaking a lot recently about this process of midlife, the menopausal age as a threshold, and being, it's a birthing process, just like any other process. So we come into puberty, there's hormonal fluctuations, there's all of that. There's kind of that whole transition phase, and it can be, cranky and messy and, scratchy and all the things. The same thing happens on the other side.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, we can feel kind of twisted up and like, what the hell is happening here? But at the same time, it's like, I mean, honestly, for me, it feels like there's actually some force pulling from the center of the earth. And at the same time, opening up like the universe at the same time and going, this is what's available to you now.
Yes.
This is reality. All the shit out there that you've been trained to believe, it's not true. And that can be very discombobulating, disorienting. So when we're in the threshold space, it can be scary and disorienting and like, what the fuck? So, I love what you're saying about this. Like, if we can just trust and have guides, do some of this self-development work, develop a meditation practice, movement, and, all the things that can seem a little bit on the edges of what is mainstream. Like, of course, you can also go to your doctor and get your hormones checked and, all that stuff.
And you should. I'm on bioidentical hormone therapy, and
Me too.
I'm a huge proponent of it.
Me too.
I mean, my perimenopausal years were not without suffering. There was tremendous suffering, physically, psychically, emotionally, on every level. Because, and this is another thing that maybe we'll segue into the next point, but looking back after 10 years of the menopausal process, I'm officially, according to the traditional medical community, postmenopausal now. I really have come to understand that, the last 10 years of perimenopause and all the so-called mood swings and the things that the medical community like to name as a syndrome have really been the excavation of all of my childhood pain that I was not able to access yet. And it was an archetypal journey to go into those shadowy spaces and feel and release all of everything I've ever stuffed for the benefit of someone else began to bubble its way to the surface. And it was gut-wrenching, but also the most beautiful metamorphosis I've ever gone through. And I know myself and love myself and feel myself so much more than I ever have in my life, because now I'm free from all of that. And I know who I am and my core vibration.
2 things. So the first one is, there are some cultures that don't even have a word for menopause because the feminine is so honored throughout the stages of a woman's life, that excavation process that you were just speaking to. Not to say that it doesn't exist, but there they have tools for it.
Right.
They honor it.
Right.
They honor the wisdom that the crone will bring and the
Yeah.
vision that she will bring.
Yeah.
So that transition phase looks different than it does in our cultures and maybe more Western cultures or what have you, because
Yeah.
we stuff and we don't acknowledge the
Yeah.
true processes of the feminine and
Yeah.
what that actually means in a woman's life, and frankly, in everyone's life. So when we talk about masculine and feminine, we're not talking about male and female, right?
Right.
These are two energy patterns. There's a masculine and a feminine energy pattern in every single human.
Yes.
In nature and everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily male and female, but it's this feminine energy that has been squashed throughout the past however many thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so that's what's bubbling up now because our planet needs it, which is a whole other conversation. And the second point, add it to the list. There's many. The second point that I wanted to ask about was what are your tools? Like I was kind of just speaking to these other cultures have tools, right? To acknowledge, to honor the feminine. What were certain things or what are certain things that you still have in your life that really helped you during this process, during this tumultuous threshold phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, and arguably what catalyzed the whole thing was a dedicated and devoted meditation practice. I would say back in 2012, I started meditating every day after I was finished with my last client. I would get on my own table and lay there for an hour, and just with the intention of clearing anyone's energy that I potentially picked up through my work and just offering gratitude for the day. So very, very simple, right? But I did that 5 days a week, every day. And it was at the end of that year when I started having this massive awakening. And I believe that the meditation practice catalyzed that and also supported me through what was to be the next 10 years of deep transformation. So yeah, definitely cultivating a regular meditation practice. There are millions of ways into the meditative space, and there isn't a right or wrong one for anyone. It's a matter of finding out which one works for you. And I love coaching people who are wanting to start a meditation practice because most of the time we've all meditated. The fact is, we've all meditated. We just haven't known we have because we have very rigid views of what we think meditation should look like. Another practice that really saved my life was yoga. I started taking yoga in 2013 with a very beloved yoga instructor, and I had a very regular yoga practice, definitely through the first 4 to 5 years. It's kind of tapered off since then, but yoga puts the mind and body in a deep state of awareness together. And it's great for opening up the stuck places in your body and allowing that energy to move. And I had a lot of emotional release during my yoga classes. And Reiki, I would say, hands down, has become the most important tool for self-discovery. And more than anything else, really has put me into a place of radical, unconditional love of self and radical self-acceptance, like no other healing modality I've ever tried really did. Reiki has been my lifeline through menopause.
What does that look like? And what I mean by that, number one, can you do Reiki on yourself?
You can. And that's actually the first thing you learn in Reiki. In fact, I have a Reiki for self-care class that I teach people. That's the only focus. You receive your Reiki attunement and you learn all about how to use Reiki for self-healing, self-discovery, and manifestation. Because when Dr. Usui brought the practice to Earth, he first used it on himself. Then he taught his students how to use it on themselves. And then he taught them how to use it on others. So first and foremost, Reiki is a self-healing practice. And a lot of people don't talk about that, but I'm passionate about that. So yes, for me, it was giving myself Reiki twice a day. I give myself Reiki, and I've done this for 3 years and I continue to do it. Every night before I go to bed, while I'm laying in my bed, I give myself Reiki. It helps me drop off to sleep. And then in the morning, when I wake up, I give myself Reiki for 30 to 45 minutes before I get out of bed. And it's everything. It's absolutely everything.
So give us, if you can, we're not teaching anyone how to do this here. That's not
right.
the intention. So
Sure.
don't like take this and think like, oh, I'm going to go do some Reiki. But what I would love is, can you paint a picture of what that looks like? Like doing Reiki on yourself. And then I want to ask you about self-love. So I don't want to forget
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
So, but just paint us a quick picture of like, if you're doing Reiki on yourself, what does that look like?
Well, that's a really great question. And I think that the best place, so Reiki, like a lot of other universal life force, lives in the heart. So the Western Reiki hand positions are very centered around the 7 chakras. So it's laying 2 hands, first at the crown of the head, then at the third eye, then at the throat and the heart, and moving all the way down through to the bottoms of the feet. A great place to start, and this is one of my favorite self-love practices actually, is just placing hands at heart center and the Anahata Mudra from yoga, which is the right hand on top of the heart, left hand on top of that. And you can recirculate your own love energy from your own heart chakra through to yourself. And you might feel it flowing in like an infinity pattern, flowing through your arms and back through your heart. And you can certainly do that with Reiki once you're Reiki attuned. Another wonderful self-love practice that I've adopted, especially to get me through the really dark times, is giving myself a tantric embrace, where I'm placing my left hand on my right shoulder and my right hand on my left shoulder, and literally just giving myself a hug. And I'm just closing my eyes and breathing into that. And you can feel all of the tension in your body melt away when you give yourself a hug in that way. And it really does tune you into what it actually feels like to feel love and compassion and empathy for the self.
This is such a critical point. Like, I really want to have this land for people, because I know, and I'm saying this from my own experience. Like, I can see how in some ways, even when we're alone, if there's no one else around, it could be uncomfortable. It could seem weird to like, what? I'm going to put my hand over here and then hand over here and give myself a hug. And like, what the, like, it's not going to do anything. It's just weird, And my invitation is to do it anyway. Do it every day for 7 days, 14 days, just as a challenge. You don't even have to believe it. You don't even have to think it's real. You don't even have to, none of that. Just try it and see what happens. It's phenomenal. It is phenomenal.
It's a game changer.
It is a game changer to put your own hands on your own body. I have my own version of that. But putting your own hands on your own body with the intention of softness, relaxation, love, nurture, nourishment. Because I think sometimes as women, especially in motherhood and coming out of that mother phase, we start to crave nourishment. We start to crave nurturing. And oftentimes we're craving it from other women. It can be anywhere. You can be craving it from in any capacity, but there's a craving there. There's a hunger for that nourishment, wanting to almost mother ourselves.
Yes.
Because we've been mothering, whatever that looks like. It could, like you said, it could be a business, creatively, it could be lots of different forms and all of those together, or whatever that looks like in your life. But we've been in that process for so long. It's like, there's a kind of an exhaustion that can come in and be like, I just want somebody to love me. I want somebody to take care of me. Like, and that's where sisterhood comes into place, community, finding your people, being with your people, developing intimate relationships that are connected like that. And hands-on touch cannot be, for me, emphasized enough.
Yeah, we're hardwired for it.
We are. And we've lost it. We've engineered it out of our culture for a lot of different reasons. but I've been in a lot of communities that, you know, when you can open up to safely with consent, having hands-on touch, it all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we're having a totally different experience. We're actually having a human connection now.
Exactly.
What I was having before wasn't.
Yeah.
And you get that very sharp distinction. And so doing that practice with yourself, with your own hands, and feeling, I'm actually holding my hands up into the camera, feeling in your hands what's coming through. And again, it helps to sensitize the body, and it helps to sensitize the receiving and the giving that comes through each of our hands. And when you put them on yourself and allow yourself to feel what's happening, then you can possibly have a glimpse of what self-love really means and what it feels like.
It feels like, exactly. Yeah.
And then your relationship to yourself and to everything else in your life changes.
Yep. Yep. It's amazing.
It's really powerful stuff. Okay. I do want to ask you, because this just came up for me with the hands and kind of the sides, like you were very specific about right hand on the heart, left hand on top. What's the difference? Why the specificity of left and right, and what does all that mean?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in Chinese traditional medicine and any other energy-based healing practice, it's widely accepted information that we hold our masculine or our yang energy on the right side of our bodies, including our right hand. And we hold our yin or feminine energies on the left side of the body or our left hand. So when you are crossing left hand to right shoulder, that is your feminine energy, if you will, crossing over to support your masculine energy. And when you are placing your right hand on your left shoulder, that is your masculine energy, your masculine expression, crossing over in support of your feminine energy. And so in the yogic tradition, the masculine came first because the masculine was the support for the feminine. So if you think of Shiva and Kali, for instance, Shiva is the god of destruction in the Hindu tradition, and he governs a number of other amazing and wonderful processes. And Kali was this chaotic, entropic, just, perpetually moving goddess that would just basically spin herself out into oblivion. And whenever she was getting too cranked up, Shiva would throw himself under her to ground her and allow her to stand on his masculine stability, security, and sustenance energy. And so if you can think about that in terms of the body, the right side is the masculine, which is holding space for and a support for the left side, which is your feminine.
Something that I've always found fascinating, anytime there's like if I have something going on in my physical body, let's say something's going on in my right foot or left shoulder or knee or hip, or, it's always at the very least entertaining for me to look at that from this perspective. Like, oh, it's my right foot, my right hip, my right. So what, in this domain of conversation that we're in right now, what would something like that mean? Let's just say I have my right foot is the one that's always, if there's going to be a pain, it's always going to be in that right foot, never the left one. So what would that possibly mean?
Well, it could mean a number of different things. If you were one of my clients, I would first be checking both sides of your body and just kind of digging into, okay, like who is Angie and how does she move through the world? Pain, more than anything, is really just the body asking for attention. So if you're having pain in your right foot, it could mean a number of different things going on with your yang energy or your masculine expression. It could mean that you're running too much yang and you need to rest. It could mean that you're having a struggle with your masculine energy, like you're somehow fighting against it. You could be at war with a masculine energy in your life, your partner, your father, your son. It can manifest in a number of different things, but it's typically if you have something, because I have a number of clients who come in and have a number of issues going on all on one side of the body. And that's definitely speaking toward a yin-yang imbalance. So my approach to that is, if somebody comes in, for instance, and they're chronically injured on their right side, I notice this a lot in my athletes. They're overtraining, they're not eating, they're not resting, they're not recovering. They're essentially running their cars into the ground without ever putting fuel in them. So all of those people are suffering from what I call a yin-yang imbalance. They're running too much yang without enough yin. So my advice to them is always to stop and begin to run some more yin energy, meaning rest more, replenish more, restore more, drink more, receive more. Those are all aspects of the yin or feminine energy. And I think, to your point about why women reach this age of our lives and we're completely depleted, is because many of us are running yang energy our whole lives, because we've been conditioned since birth to be masculine in order to be valued and seen and respected. And what that results in is a woman in her 40s and 50s who is an absolute burnout. She's probably got a chronic, if not terminal illness going on. It's just not sustainable. And I know for me personally, the closer I inch toward really stepping over the threshold into the crone or the priestess aspect where I am now, is I can't with that. I cannot run more yang energy than I run yin energy. In fact, I can run more yin energy than yang, but I can't be in my masculine anymore like I used to be. It's just not a part of my energy signature anymore.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think that's a very natural process for women. And again, the modern medical community wants to say that's fatigue. No, it's not. Needing to nap every day is not fatigue.
Yeah.
It is dropping into the more feminine gifts. And that is a natural, beautiful part of menopause that actually should be celebrated.
Mm-hmm. It's replenishment.
It is. Yeah. After a lifetime of running, 2 businesses, 2 kids, ran the half marathon, did the Ironman, whatever it is, that's all yang energy, all of it. And we can't sustain that once we reach a certain age, arguably even before 40.
Arguably, I think you're absolutely correct, because in our society, we only value, you mentioned this before, we only value achievement.
Yes.
And very masculine type of energy.
Yes.
Goals, results.
Exactly. Yeah.
Success.
Yep.
And we don't value as much these other more fluid, chaotic, creative,
yes,
restful, nourishing types of energies. And so the way I often think about this is, it's not necessarily, it isn't. It's not that one is wrong and one is right? No. They are both equally important. We need both. The feminine chaotic energy needs that structure, right? Yes. And vice versa. So they are both necessary. Neither one is right or wrong. But what's happened is we've overdeveloped that muscle of the masculine energy.
Yes.
We've just placed all of our value there. It has us way out of balance, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And this can often bring in fatigue, disease, all of that stuff. And so it's just a matter of developing this other muscle. We're not giving any of that other stuff away, right? We're not leaving the masculine. We're not saying that it's bad or any of that. And you can even think of other words for this. I mean, it doesn't have to be masculine and feminine. It's just like we can just start to develop this other muscle, because it just hasn't been used as much. Yeah. And that's it.
That's why I like the terms yin and yang from because it really isn't about gender or body. It's about qualities of movement of energy.
Yes.
You have fast moving energy, you have slow moving energy, you have cool energy, you have hot energy. We don't create a story or a gender around any of those. We just know that, ice is cold and fire is hot, and there's no political or social agenda around that. It is what it is. And I would love for everyone to understand their own gender identities as just energy. We have so many people talking about being they or being him or her or whatever. We're all both, actually. And if we understood ourselves more at an energetic level, the gender confusion would just completely go away, because we would know that I am in a woman's body because I was born with a womb and ovaries, and yet I am both. I am they, but I'm also she. And he is also they, and he is also he. They're so close to just profoundly understanding energetic balance, but they're just two in their physical bodies with it. So that's another YouTube conversation also.
It is a whole other thing. Oh, wow. Well, Alli, I love this conversation. We could have 25 more, like we've already discovered. We could have a series. Is there anything else that is alive for you? Are there any trends that you're seeing, tones, themes throughout your practice that you would love to bring into this space?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, for me, I'm actually really feeling very called to work with men. I've had a special heart for the masculine evolution process my whole life. And, the masculine is as much in need of healing and integration as the feminine is, because I think we talked about this in one of our other conversations, but everyone has suffered at the hands of the patriarchal systems of oppression and domination. And
definitely.
I just think, what's been really coming alive for me today in particular is this need for rest. Rest is the invitation to personal evolution, because rest is the place where we start to allow the shadow material to come to the surface, and we take the time and the inward focus to pay attention to what is going on, first with our physical body, then with our feelings and emotions, and eventually our psyche, our subconscious mind. So rest is, pardon the pun, so slept on. But it really is. So, if your body in any way is calling for rest through fatigue, exhaustion, depletion, illness, just rest. Whether you're male or female, rest is everything. And rest and deep relaxation catalyzes a healing process that will absolutely change your life.
Yeah, I think in our go-go culture right now, we've gotten to this point of where we think rest is weak.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
Weakness. I'm sorry, like that sounds great and good for you, but I don't have time.
Right. And again, even when we're resting, what are we doing? We're scrolling through social media, we're watching Netflix. And so put the screens down. Like, what real rest is inward focus. Like if you're in front of your phone or your computer or your television, that's not rest.
No,
that's just
it is not.
Sitting still. But real, true restorative rest is a turning of your awareness into the self, into your body and its sensations, into your feeling and thought space, and really like tuning into what is going on with you. And focus on the self is another one of those topics that we could speak for another hour and a half on, and how we've all been conditioned to believe that focusing on yourself is selfish. But I will say one thing that I tell my Reiki students all the time: your self-care is your primary act of service. Because if you can be whole and happy and healthy, and you can present that part of yourself to your community and your family and those you love, that is your greatest gift to the world, singularly. And that's enough. But in order to get to that place, you have to be self-focused and make sure that you fill your cup.
Beautiful. Such a great place to wrap up this conversation. I will ask one last question. What does magic mean for you, and where do you find it or create it for yourself?
I love that question. Such a good question. I really feel like more than any other goddess aspect, the crone or the priestess is the embodiment of magic. And magic for me is in the realm of spirit and energy, and seeing how things conspire and come together in seemingly random but completely not random ways, to support your healing and your highest self-expression. It really is in Reiki, and it's helping somebody really return to understanding that they have everything they need within, and they need no guru outside of themselves, whether that guru is a government or a doctor or a religious leader. We really have everything we need within, and helping people discover that and feel that in a really real, powerful way is that's my best day.
I could not agree more. Finding the wisdom within, because it is there.
That is the crown.
It is there. That is the crown.
There. Yeah.
And it's always been there, and it always will be there.
Yes. Yep. It's just a matter of tapping in.
Absolutely. Alli, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I adore you.
I adore you. I know. I adore you. We will do it again. And I will post in the show notes. Where can people find you?
That's a great question. So we do have an Instagram page. It's thebodytemple.us, which is also our domain name. So for our website, if anyone wants to do any distance work, we have a digital studio. You can find all that on our website, which is thebodytemple.us.
Great. And I will link all of that in the show notes.
Perfect.
And it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Angie. Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alli. She is something else, and we could have obviously gone for a very long time. And I'm sure I'll be having her back on the show, because there are just so many topics that we could talk about. Every time we get together, we could go on for hours, and we actually have, about the coolest topics. She really knows herself and her work in such a thorough and honest way. I highly recommend working with her. And as always, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you also want to see these conversations. Please share with your friends and follow me, Angie.Bird, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum, and it'll help our sisters out there who are also looking to bring some magic and mayhem into their lives as well.